Dzień dobry, witam Państwa serdecznie na JetBrains Space Day. Będę miał dzisiaj przyjemność dla Państwa poprowadzić to spotkanie wraz z kolegą z JetBrainsa. Ja nazywam się Michał Schubert, zajmuję się w Connect Distribution sprawami sprzedażowymi i jest z nami także Martin Bolio z JetBrainsa, Developer Advocate, który pokaże Państwu produkt, który jest bohaterem dzisiejszego spotkania na żywo. Na dzisiaj przewidzieliśmy taką agendę, także na początku będzie kilka słów o naszej firmie Connect Distribution i o JetBrainsie. Następnie będzie prezentacja oraz live demo JetBrains Space, a także na koniec przewidujemy pytania od uczestników. Dobrze, jak wygląda firma Connect Distribution? Działamy w 4 obszarach. Jest to bezpieczeństwo sieciowe, wirtualizacja i storage, narzędzia deweloperskie i systemy operacyjne, baza danych, także już teraz te wszystkie loga się załadowały, także widzicie Państwo, jakich producentów jesteśmy dystrybutorem. W części security mamy narzędzia od takich typowych, narzędzi antymalware'owych do korporacji, od Threat Micro, poprzez narzędzia do monitoringu infrastruktury, różnego rodzaju firewall, UTM, Next Generation Firewall, Web Application Firewall, także narzędzia do sanityzacji, ochrony poczty, e-mail, ochrony i skanowania urządzeń, które są wnoszone do firmy za pomocą kiosków. Narzędzia także fajne narzędzia do resetowania haseł, szczególnie dla dużych organizacji, gdzie po prostu często pracownicy się nie znają i taki telefon do administratora z prośbą o zresetowanie hasła. No, nie zawsze musi się spotkać z zaufaniem takiej osoby, która może to zmienić i te narzędzia, które dostarczamy, mogą w tym pomóc. Także narzędzia antyphishingowe, narzędzia typu Network Access Control, czyli to, z czego korzystamy teraz często my, pracując właśnie z domu, czyli narzędzie, czyli zdalny dostęp do zasobów sieciowych oraz kilka skanerów podatności działających zarówno w sferze sieciowej od Flexery, czyli skanujące urządzenia, które mamy w firmie, a także skanery podatności aplikacji i stron internetowych, czyli tak naprawdę podatności, które mogą ktoś wykorzystać, próbując zhakować nas z internetu. Mamy także narzędzia i część tutaj tak właśnie tą storage'ową i wirtualizacyjną. Mamy te narzędzia do akceleracji przepływu danych pomiędzy do data centera i z data center. Są to narzędzia StoreMagica i DataCore'a, są to narzędzia software'owe, czyli nie wymagające zakupu kolejnych urządzeń. Mamy także macierze all-flashowe od Access Store'a, narzędzia do zarządzania drukarkami i wydrukami w dużych, rozproszonych środowiskach od Finprinta, narzędzia do wirtualizacji zarówno aplikacji na różnych urządzeniach, jak i systemu Windows, na przykład na komputerach Maca, czyli tym zajmuje się Parallels, a także narzędzia do przywracania danych od Zerto. Chcę tu zwrócić uwagę, że nie jest to typowy backup, jest to narzędzie typu Disaster Recovery. Jeśli Państwa ten temat interesuje, to zapraszam do kontaktu, opowiemy więcej. A w części deweloperskiej, tej prym wiedzie, bohater dzisiejszego spotkania, firma JetBrains i ze swoimi narzędziami bardzo popularnymi, także narzędzia do automatycznych testów wykonywanych, czy na aplikacjach, czy na API, zarówno testów funkcjonalnych, jak i testów wydajnościowych od SmartBeara, a na koniec takiej pracy też informatycznej można wykorzystywać narzędzie Flexery, Install Shield czy Install Anywhere do stworzenia wersji instalacyjnych. Mamy także narzędzia fajne TechSmita, są to narzędzia do rozrzutów ekranów, tworzenia różnych prezentacji z tego, także nagrywania ekranów, nagrywania prezentacji i tworzenia później ciekawych filmów, to tak do wykorzystania komercyjnego. Można też to wykorzystać TechSmita i te rozwiązania prywatnie, także do tworzenia na przykład filmów z wakacji, co przyznaję bez bicia, sam często robię. A także narzędzia Mindjeta, to są tak narzędzia typu mapy myśli, czy rozdrysowywania myśli, pomysłów, do prowadzenia różnych burz mózgów, spotkań, prowadzenia projektów, przydzielania zadań, tego typu rzeczy, a także w części tej systemów operacyjnych i baz danych mamy narzędzia od MySQL, Oracle'a, a także systemy operacyjne oparte na Linuxie od SUSE. I to by było na tyle, czym zajmuje się Connect. Teraz powiem kilka słów o firmie JetBrains. Tutaj liczby stare rosną. Jak ja przychodziłem do Connect Distribution w 2016 roku, 4,5 roku temu, liczba aktywnych użytkowników JetBrainsa wówczas była na poziomie 2 milionów. W ciągu 4,5 roku ta liczba wzrosła do ponad 10. także przyrost jest rzeczywiście bardzo znaczny. W obecnej chwili produkty JetBrainsa są wykorzystywane w 213 krajach i terytoriach. Firma JetBrains ma ponad 1500 stałych pracowników i w ciągu swoich 20 lat działalności zdobyła ponad 90 różnych nagród branżowych. W ofercie JetBrainsa w obecnej chwili ponad 30 produktów różnego rodzaju narzędzi deweloperskich, czy to od języku programowania, czy od IDE, czy różnych dodatków, pluginów, czy różnych wersji edukacyjnych swoich rozwiązań, a także w ostatniej chwili pojawiły się ostatnio 2 nowe produkty, czyli Ktor, nowy framework oraz Code with Me, takie narzędzie do pracy grupowej nad kodem. JetBrains w obecnej chwili ma 9 biur na świecie, rozproszonych przede wszystkim w Europie, część w Rosji oraz w Stanach Zjednoczonych, natomiast JetBrains jest obecny tam, gdzie biur nie ma, działają aktywnie dystrybutorzy. Dobrze, opowiem Państwu jeszcze kilka słów o licencjonowaniu, jak to działa, bo wszyscy wiemy, jak działa, a przyznam szczerze, dosyć codziennie odpowiadam na pytania dotyczące licencjonowania, także pozwolę sobie przypomnieć. Większość licencji to są subskrypcje i dotyczy to model subskrypcyjny tych produktów, które są wylistowane po lewej stronie ekranu. Natomiast jeśli kupimy licencję na 1 rok, subskrypcję, przepraszam, na 1 rok, otrzymujemy w bundlu licencję wieczną typu Perpetual Fallback License. I powiem pokrótce, jak to działa, czym jest to Perpetual Fallback License. Pokażę to na przykładzie. Ten graf pokazuje tutaj 12 miesięcy, czyli taki rok zakupu narzędzia od JetBrainsa. I przykładowo w momencie zakupu otrzymujemy taką wersję pierwszą, to jest oczywiście przykład. Potem dostajemy wersję drugą w czasie trwania subskrypcji, czyli ten produkt jest stale rozwijany, dostajemy różne dodatki, upgrade'y, update'y, tego typu rzeczy. Wersję trzecią i przychodzi moment wygaśnięcia licencji. Jeśli tej licencji nie zdecydujemy się odnowić, licencja wraca do momentu takiego, jaki był zakupiony w momencie zakupu i taka licencja już z nami zostaje jako licencja Perpetual Fallback. A przykład drugi pokaże nam, kiedy taka licencja nie przysługuje, czyli innymi słowy kupujemy licencję na okres krótszy, tutaj na tym przykładzie jest 11 miesięcy. Mamy wersję pierwszą w momencie zakupu, pojawiają się te właśnie tutaj różne upgrade'y, update'y. I ja 12 miesięcy nie decydujemy się odnowić, czyli licencja wraca do momentu, jaka była, czyli o rok, tak? A rok temu takiej licencji w ogóle nie mieliśmy, czyli ta licencja fallback w takim przypadku nie przysługuje, czyli trzeba przynajmniej minimum kupić ją na rok. Można też zakupić licencję wieczystą, dotyczy tylko 3 grup produktów, czyli TeamCity, czyli narzędzie typu Continuous Integration od JetBrainsa, do AppSource, czyli narzędzie takiej analizy projektowej, przeglądania kodu i Issue Tracker od JetBrainsa o nazwie uTrack, czyli te 3 grupy produktów kupujemy w formie licencji wieczystych. JetBrains umożliwia nam i daje różne rabaty za kontynuację. W pierwszym roku subskrypcji produktów mamy rabat za kontynuację 0%, no bo to jest nowy zakup, natomiast warto odnawiać, warto pilnować tych licencji, bo już w drugim roku użytkowania otrzymujemy 20% rabatu od tej ceny pierwszej, a w trzecim roku subskrypcji w każdym następnym już jest 40%. W przypadku odnowień krótszych niż rok, wyrównywania dat subskrypcji, rabat za kontynuację jest naliczany co pełen rok. O co chodzi w tym zdaniu? Pokażę to na przykładzie. Mamy w pierwszym roku 0%, w drugim roku 20% i w trzecim roku użytkowania i w każdym następnym 40%. I przykład. Kupiliśmy subskrypcję na 1 rok, potem na 6 miesięcy, a potem zupełnie na pierwszy rok. Czyli pierwszy rok to jest ta czerwona część, potem drugi zakup na 6 miesięcy, czyli kupujemy go na 6 miesięcy z rabatem 20%, a potem jeśli zdecydujemy się odnowić na rok, to cena tego trzeciego zakupu będzie miksem rabatów 20% i 40%. Czyli ten rabat za kontynuację jest przyliczany co pełen rok subskrybowania. I dotyczy oczywiście to produktów objętych modelem subskrypcyjnym. Rabaty ilościowe, czyli oprócz rabatów za kontynuację możemy uzyskać także rabaty ilościowe, czyli od tego, ile narzędzi jest wykorzystywanych, ile subskrypcji jest wykorzystywanych właśnie w przedsiębiorstwie. Jeśli jest poniżej 10, to tego rabatu ilościowego nie mamy. W przypadku 10, powyżej 10 jest 5%, powyżej 20 jest 7%, a jeśli już tego JetBrainsa używamy naprawdę obficie w naszej organizacji, to i mamy powyżej 50 subskrypcji, prosimy o kontakt, zostanie przydzielony już tutaj dużo jeszcze atrakcyjniejszy rabat dla takiej firmy, która tak bardzo nam zaufała. I z mojej strony to już wszystko. Dziękuję bardzo.
Dzień dobry, everyone. Hello, everyone. What you see here is Space, and the idea of the remaining time in this meeting is to go over Space, what it is, what it can do for you, and show some of the features and workflows that are available in the product there. No slides, just live demo. I want to ask you if there's any questions during this presentation. Feel free to ask them. I'm fine with interruptions and just going into some other stuff as well. And with that, let's go for it. So Space is our product combining people, teams, and making them work together on projects. And what you get is when you register for Space, you get a Space organization. In this case, it's demo.jetbrains.space, where we have Galactic Travels as the company using Space in this case. During the demo, I'll be impersonating two people. So I have one user using a light mode browser, but I also have a second user using a dark mode browser. So if you see me switch, it's a different user that we have in the product. And with that, let's continue. So once you log into your Space organization and you have some data and people in there, of course, you will see that on the homepage, you get the things that are important to you today. So first of all, I'll see my daily schedule there. I'll be able to quickly navigate through that, see what's happening on a certain day and so on. This is quite boring because right now I only have a daily stand-up in this meeting, but you'll see if you have more meetings that they will all show up in this widget. Also, what you will see is upcoming vacations, upcoming holidays, if there are any, and also upcoming birthdays, if people on your team that you work with are actually having their birthday as well. So you'll see those things appear here. Other things you'll see on the homepage are the people you follow and the teams that you work in. So what you see here is the people that I follow. When you navigate to a profile, you can essentially follow them using this button here. And that means that you will see them on your homepage, so you can quickly see who's available, who's not available. So in this case, we can see Robert Lee is unavailable. I'll see those that I favorited, but also the people from the team that I'm in. So I'm in the software development team here, so I'll see everyone in there, and I'll see 4 people are unavailable. And actually, if I click this link, I can see who is unavailable because vacations or holidays or whatever. Other things you see on the homepage is favorite projects. Again, something that you can customize. The projects that you work in, you can enter here. You also see code reviews. If you're a software developer and you have code reviews assigned, you can quickly navigate to them from your homepage. And there's also recent blog posts that have been sent in the company. Now I'll dive into those blog posts later on, but the general idea is that Space is a means of communicating between people using chats, but also using more elaborate posts that can be blog posts with company news. They can be targeted at the entire organization, but also at just one specific team or one specific location in your company. Let's maybe quickly dive into projects first, because I think a lot of people will be using Space for software development and so on, and projects are really where all of that is going to happen. So you can have one or more projects hosted in Space, and each project will have its own homepage as well, where you get a description about the project, what is it about, what is going on in this project, and you'll also be able to quickly see who is working on that project. Now, I know a lot of solutions actually use projects and teams in the same scope. In Space, we decided to separate the two and actually have projects as a place where people from multiple teams can actually work together instead of having just one team working on things. So this KTOR project here, you'll see that there's one team, the software development team, working on this, but also some individual people, stakeholders maybe, who may be interested in following issues, tracking whatever is going on in this project. In every project on the homepage, again, you will see code reviews for you. You'll see open issues that are available. There's checklists on there and favorite repositories as well. Repositories where coding will happen, issues where you do issue tracking, checklists where you do planning and all of that stuff. Before we dive into repositories, I quickly want to mention that Space is currently very oriented around developers. If you open up a project, you will see that everything is developer related. But also if you have teams that don't need repositories or issue tracking and things like that, there's also things like document tracking where you can actually host documents that can be any description that you want to work on together with people. So even if the marketing team or sales team or whatever team wants to use Space to work on documents and collaborate on documents, that is also possible here in Space. Those documents, by the way, have an edit mode and you can work on them together with multiple people at the same time. All right, back to our project. And let's focus on software development a little bit before we dive into the other features. So what you will see as a software developer, at some point you want to write code, and that code is going to be hosted in a repository in a project. Again, I favorited some repositories in this project. A project can have 0, 1, or more, even if you want 20 of them, repositories as part of that project. And what they allow you to do is store your source codes and work together on that source code in a Git repository. Now, I could already open it, but I'm first going to quickly show you something that I want to give you as a side note. So when you add a repository in Space, you'll see that you can create a new one if you want, but you can also migrate from another Git hosting. So if you have a customer or if you are using something like Bitbucket or GitHub or Azure DevOps or whatever, you can easily migrate that repository from a third-party system into Space and quickly start working in Space as well. Another thing that you can do is also mirror a repository, either from any Git host or from GitHub. And what that will do is more than just an initial one-time migration. This will actually keep both sides synchronized. So even if only part of your team starts using Space, they can all still work together, and Space will make sure that repositories on Bitbucket or Azure DevOps are still up to date with whatever is changing in Space here as well. Having that said, let's look at an actual repository where we have some code stored. So this project has 2 repositories, and for every repository, you will be able to see all of the commits that happened. So you will see that Rustem, in this case, wrote something in code. You can see what is there in the description, and you can also look at the changes that are in there and quickly see what code was changed as part of this specific commit. So you can go through them, you can filter them by author. So if I search for myself, I'm not sure if I will even find something there. Yes, apparently I did commit to this repository. So you'll see that at some point I upgraded the README file with some additional details. Commits are nice and really nice to explore whatever is going on and quickly follow up on what is going on in the repository. But what you'll be using mostly is probably either this clone button, where you can clone this repository in IntelliJ or in Rider or in whatever IDE you may be using and start working with it. The other option that you can do is browse this repository in the browser and just look at whatever is in there from Space. What you'll see is that by default, the README file is being rendered. So if your repository has a README file, you'll be able to add some documentation on how people can get started, how they can set up their machine and actually start contributing to the codes that you have in this repository. Other things you can do there is just browse other files that are there. So let's open something random there and you can look at the source code of it and browse through it. Another thing that I find personally very interesting is that people can also write comments on whatever file is in this repository. So you'll see these green and blue comment icons there. Well, actually, what you will see is that people in the team may have asked questions or added remarks about some parts of the source codes previously. So what you'll see is that, for example, in this file here, I actually asked the software development team whether this thing is still being used or not. So without having to jump into a chat, I can just click the comment icon here, start typing and say, hey, software development team, I have this question about whatever is going on in the source code here. Can you help me or can you give me some insights and so on? What's interesting is that if I have something like this, where I am commenting, I can also reply to whatever is going on there and say, for example, thank you, and say to my colleague, for example, can you remove Or can you update the documentation? And I can just write that in here inside of this source code without actually adding it to the proper source code. So this is really just a chat that I'm seeing from within Space, from within a file in our repository. What's interesting in Space is that a lot of things are a chat. So this conversation, while I am seeing this in source codes, my colleague will actually see this pop up as a chat notification. So you'll see she gets a chat notification here, can dive in there and see this conversation with a little bit of context on what this was about. The reason that Space is doing this is that there's lots of interruptions in your workday typically, and maybe you don't need the full context. Maybe you don't need to go to this repository to be able to give a proper reply to this comment that was added. Maybe just having these few lines of code in a chat and the rest of the conversation is enough to just say, okay, I will do this and post that as a response from chats. Switching back to myself, I will now see that response in source code and we can continue conversing about whatever is going on here. Other things that are in the source browser here is that you can, of course, do these chats and add comments and remarks or add questions to people in the team in codes. What you can also do is edit things from within the browser. So you'll be able to edit files there quickly if the need arises for some reason. Typically, you will still use that clone button and clone into IntelliJ and start working on the code there after all. Right, so this is a quick overview of repositories. Now, I mentioned that clone button a couple of times where you can start working from within the IDE. Quickly making a sidestep here, everything you see in Space, I'm currently using the browser to work with it. There is also an application that you can install on Windows and on Mac OS X and on Linux. There's a mobile application as well. And if you are coding, if you're a software developer, this step of cloning can also be done from IntelliJ because there is also a Space plugin there that allows you to quickly connect to your Space organization and start working with it. All right, in codes, there's a couple of other things that you will typically do. At some point, people may be wanting feedback on whatever is going on in the codes. People can actually open a code review or a merge request asking, can I bring this into the main branch of the code repository? You can open those, and again, you will see that you will get a focused review tool where you can look at the changes that are in a specific review, where you can also, again, add comments and give feedback on whatever this developer has been doing. And once all of those are done, you can then merge back to the main branch or whatever. So code reviews are there, source repositories are there. This is a typical part of the developer workflow. I'll stick with developers for a little bit longer because Space also has some of the next steps available. So typically you write code in a repository. At some point, a code review will happen and you want to contribute code back into the main branch or part of the application you are building. And once you do that, you will typically want to do some CI/CD, continuous integration or continuous delivery, where the changes in your code are being built. Maybe unit tests will run, things like that. And that is what happens in jobs in Space. So what you will see is that every repository can have jobs defined, and I actually have a couple in this repository where whenever changes are made, we actually build all of the applications that are there. So we will build the chat application that is in there, the Queet application, the UCube application, and so on. For every build in there, you can look at the details. So you can see that we had a couple of failing builds earlier, but now everything is fine. For every build, you can look at the logs. You can see whatever happens, what steps were executed, and so on. But also you can track which changes are included in a build. So if for some reason, for auditing purposes, for example, you need to be aware of what commits went into which binary that you may be shipping to your customers, you'll be able to see those in here as well. If part of your build publishes artifacts, you will also be able to see them here. So let's open this one, maybe look into artifacts. You'll see that this build actually created a Maven artifact that your customers may be using later, or other people in the team may be using later on. Now, CI/CD runs, so you can see whether the source code has been built successfully, whether tests have run successfully, and so on. the artifacts are shown, but of course you need a place to store those artifacts. If you have codes that you're building and want to ship to customers, you need a place to store those binaries as well. Well, that's what happens with package repositories in Space, where you can create a new repository that can either contain containers or container images to do Docker and Kubernetes and Helm charts and so on, where you can host Maven packages. If you want to ship to your Java or Kotlin developers, you can host those there. If you're doing mobile development on Android, you can host some jar files there as well. If you're doing .NET development, you can create NuGet feeds where you store NuGet packages in there. And if you're doing JavaScript frontends, there's NPM as well. For every package repository that is there, you will see all of the artifacts that have been published there in the past. So you'll see that some of these applications have 27 versions available. For every version, you can look at the history, you can see how many times it was downloaded. If needed, you can delete them from here, of course, as well. So all of that is there. There's also some pointers on how you can get started as a developer working with these things. So all of that is there too. Now, this was in a very, very quick and rapid overview what is there in terms of developer tools. Let's have a look at some of the tools that are going to be used by developers, but that can also be used by other teams in your company as well. So I already mentioned that a project can have documents, and this is typically where you can write documents like an employee guide, infrastructure documents, maybe something technical, some marketing documents, and so on. Not really a lot to say about that. It's a place where you can create folders and where you can upload documents that people can work on together and that you can copy, move, publish, whatever you want to do. So really a word processing engine where you can write and collaborate on documents. Some other things that each project has is checklists. Checklists is really something where you can quickly write down some notes on something or build a high-level roadmap of the things that you are doing. So for example, again, this is a software project, so it's a software checklist as well. But what you could do there is, for example, build a roadmap on adding a specific feature to your products. And this roadmap says that we need metrics, open census or whatever, some other stuff, publish to company. You can add items there, you can move them up and down, so you can quickly reorganize things. So during a meeting, if you want to quickly take notes for the entire team to see on what should be done on some topic, you can do that in checklists. Checklists are not issue tracking, but they are tied into issue tracking. So if at some point you actually want to start working on these things, you can click the Create Issue button there, and I've actually done that for a couple of those before. And you can see that add open tracing support, for example, is an issue, still unassigned right now, but you can jump into the issue to get more details. So checklists are really high-level overview. Issues are more detailed, where you see that there's a title that came from the checklist, but you can add attachments, you can comment on that, you can set a due date, you can assign this to someone in your team, you can add it to an issue board and so on. So if you want to do, for example, a marketing plan for the next couple of weeks, well, you can create issues there and then create a board with a roadmap of the things that you will be releasing at a later point. I showed that as a developer in code, you can chat with people as well. Same thing happens here in issues. If there's something you want to ask to a colleague and say, Heather again, for example, can you provide some insights? I can send this from that issue. And again, my colleague will see this pop up in chats. And this issue is now also a chat where she gets some context with the entire conversation history. If needed, she can go to the issue, but if not, she can simply respond from within this chat channel again. A question I get really often about issues is, when you have issues, can you also create issue boards? Can we do sprints and planning and so on? Well, yes, you can. There's issue boards where on every issue board, you can have sprints. You can have all of the issues that are there. If you have a backlog, you can add and remove items from the backlog into your board that you have. And then you can, of course, move things around and change the status of whatever issues are in your issue boards.
Can I have a question? Can we create a groups for which such a task will be available, or issue boards available in a group?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one. So I clicked issue boards here, and I immediately went to this board because this is currently the only board that I have. But what you can do is create multiple. So you can add another board for some other sprint plan or whatever you have. And then you can assign other issues to those boards, or even some issues maybe on multiple boards if that matters. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, a little bit, but I have, I mean, a group of people, because if we want to add privileges for part of a team, so we want to create a group for 2 users and have a second group for 4 users and add privilege for that dashboard and other
All right,
dashboard.
yeah. So this is actually a good moment to talk about that. So this is the issue board, and the issue board is again part of a project. If you want to have multiple development teams or multiple, whatever the structure of your organization is, there's a couple of things that you can do in terms of user management. And let's maybe look at that first while we're at it. So I mentioned you can have multiple projects, and you could create per team 1 project where you can create an issue board for just that team or just the people who are in that project. So that is one approach that you can do. And what you can do there as an administrator is go to the settings of your projects and then create groups or roles, for example, for accessing checklists where you can add members, change permissions, and so on. So all of that is there as well.
Okay, it's fine.
Okay, cool. Now, this is really on a project basis. There's a couple of other things that you can do as an administrator in Space, which is in the administration dashboard. I'll make a quick sidestep there, where you can have member profiles, where you can add them to teams, but also add some default privileges. So for example, if you have someone with a certain position, you can say that accountants always have access to X or Y or Z in that project as well. Roles are here again as well. So by default, you have system admins, team admins, leads, managers, members, and everyone. And then for every project that you create, there's going to be a template of all of the privileges that a project administrator will have. If you need more roles or more groups, you can, of course, add or create them here, add members, and change whatever they can do. So if you look at the list of permissions, there's lots of things that you can customize or enable or disable. So yeah, if you want to check that out, definitely sign up for a trial and see if this actually matches what you want to do. But almost everything that you can do can be limited or given access to or whatever you want. All right, so projects, I think I covered most of the things in there. So we had checklists, we had issue boards and issues as well. So let's maybe look at some of the other things that are in Space. So Space is about working together, about communicating together and bringing people together. And there's no better place to do that than in chats. So Space comes with a chats module as well, where you will see that you can have channels that people can create. You can actually browse all of the channels in this organization and, for example, look at whatever is going on in the space.net channel or space launch or software development. And I can jump into that channel, subscribe to the channel, join the channel, chat with whoever is there, and so on. Channels can be public, where everyone in the organization can join them, or they can be private, where you as an administrator of the channel add people or teams to a channel. I'm mentioning teams there because a lot of products don't have this, but in Space, if you want to add people to your channel, you can add people directly, but also if you want to add the entire sales team, for example, you can do that. If someone joins the company, joins the sales team, they will also immediately get access to all of the channels and so on. So there's no need to follow up and making sure that this specific person is added to a channel as well later on. In chats, you will have threads. So you will see that at some point there's a thread here going on about stand-up. I can go in there. I can see responses. There's reactions that people can add. You can quote, copy a link, or create an issue even from a message, which is kind of handy. If you're chatting about a bug that is occurring, well, maybe what you can do is immediately create an issue for that bug and start working on it. Another thing that I want to mention about threads is that threads will also show up in your channel lists. So by default, the channels here on the left are ordered by how recently you used them. And you'll see that my software development team is there, or my software development channel. I can jump to other channels as well, but all of the threads that I've been conversing in are shown here as well. So I can quickly jump into a specific threads and see whatever was going on in there too. Chats can be grouped and filtered and whatever you want to do there. So this is really about one-to-one communication or group communication with people. One other thing that I do want to mention is that is the to-do list in Space. In a chat, wherever you are, actually also in issues, for example, you will see this lightning bolt icon in Space. What that thing does is it adds things to your personal to-do list. So we had checklists for a team, for a project, but there's also a personal to-do list in Space that you will see on the left here, where you can add your custom items. So for example, present on Space, which I'm doing right now, I can add that to the list. I can complete this as well. I can do this manually, but also if there's something that I should be following up at some point where, for example, my colleague is asking for help on something, I can add this to my to-do lists, and this message will now be my to-do list to follow up at some point. The reason why we added that is because typically in a chat application, people ask you for something, you forget to write it down or copy it into a to-do list on paper or something like that, and you forget about this. Well, in Space, it's really easy to quickly add things to your to-do list and start working on them at a later point and really take note of what is going on. One more thing that I want to mention about the to-do list is that all of the items here can be postponed. So if you have a long to-do list, but you know that this thing, you will only work on this tomorrow or next week, you can move it out and it will not show until a specific date. What you can also do from here is create a meeting. Imagine this request for help is something that I know I will need 2 hours to work on. Well, what I can do is create a meeting for this and just schedule some time to work on this and block my agenda to start working on that. Any questions so far? All right, nothing right now. Let's continue. So chats are there. There's to-do lists as well, which is really something personal. In the to-do list, you will also be able to show your schedule for today. So I mentioned on the homepage, you can see all of your appointments and meetings. Well, in the to-do list here on the left, you will also see that information, and you can see that I have a daily stand-up going on. And that's maybe a good bridge to the next topic in Space, which is about meetings and the calendar. So Space comes with a built-in calendar where you can have a day overview or a weekly overview or months or whatever. And you can schedule meetings directly from within Space. So you can click in the agenda and then quickly chat with people on something and then add someone in the company and book a meeting. This meeting booker is there because first of all, well, you can book your meeting, you can set a timestamp, you can add members and rooms and descriptions and whatnot. But the second reason that this is there is because in Space, having more information available, such as your meetings, such as your schedule, actually makes it more valuable. Imagine I'm a developer and I need to quickly talk to one of my colleagues. The last thing I want to do is fire up my Outlook and then start scheduling a meeting. Maybe I'm just in a code review, I click a profile, schedule a meeting directly from within Space. So that's one of the reasons we have that. Some other stuff on the calendar here, it's easy to quickly find a time slot that is available. So you'll see that if I want to book a meeting here, these people have a conflicting event. You can add rooms. I'm not sure it matters too much right now in the COVID times that we are in, but if you have meeting rooms, you can also add those. One thing to mention there is that if you add meeting room information into Space and you want to do a team-wide meeting over multiple office locations, for example, I can add the software development team and Space will automatically suggest all of the meeting rooms that these people are closest to in the office location in the software development team. Right. Next to calendars, there's also the ability to have absence information in Space. So if I want to go on vacation, let's say on Friday, I want to take a day off, I can schedule that as vacation or as whatever options or reasons for being unavailable you want to add to your organization. So let's take vacation on Friday and say I'm unavailable. I can book this. And what will now happen is that my manager gets notified and they will have to approve this vacation as well, because for vacation, I've configured in this organization that will need approval. Now, the interesting thing about having absence management again in Space is that if you go to your homepage and, for example, I want to book a meeting with the entire software development team or see whenever we can organize a team outing or something like that, I can quickly see when someone is available or not available. So we'll see that, for example, until next week, Tuesday is probably not the right moment because there's lots of Easter Mondays happening within the team and some people have vacation. I have that vacation as well, so we can book on the 6th here. Absences are part of the team directory in Space, and the team directory is yet another module that is there. So all of the people in your organization will be part of this team directory, and you'll be able to have a feed of who is available or who joined the company when, who joined which team, and so on. The reason this is there is, again, to quickly be able to find information about your organization. So imagine I'm not a software developer, but I'm interested in what the software development team does and who is in there. Well, you will see that this team has a description about what they do. You can see what projects they are working on, and you can see who is in there, who joined when. You can see who is the manager. So typically you will be able to see all of the roles. So software developer, senior software developer. You'll find all of that information in there, and you'll be able to quickly chat with some person in the company and again start working with them on asking questions or checking if they're available or something like that. Right. The team directory allows you to quickly click on those things, but also if you really have no idea who to talk to and you're looking, for example, for someone who is in accounting in a certain branch office that you have, you can search for that team and say that I'm looking for accounting and I'm looking for them in one of these office locations, and you'll be able to filter that down and find the one person, in this case, in that office to talk to. Speaking about offices, and I know this is again something that doesn't really apply right now in our COVID times, in Space you can also upload your office plans and you can see who is sitting where. So if you're in the same office and you want to actually find where they are located in the office, you can also look at the floor plan and see that this person is there, maybe look at which other colleagues are sitting there, and again go to their profile and all of that information. Okay, what else is there? I promised to talk a little bit about blog posts. So blog posts are push-only information inside of your company, or at least they serve as a means of announcing things that are going on in your company. So you'll see some example blog posts here where this company has just opened up a new office, and this message was sent to everyone in the company, really a company-wide announcement saying, look, we opened a new office. If you want to relocate, contact HR. This is going on. And what's also possible is that people can comment on these blog posts. So if you have a blog post and people have questions, you'll see again that comments are there by all of the people in the company. I can write a comment from within that blog post, but again, other people can also see this from within their chats. So like chats, like issues, like code reviews and all of that, Space has those blog comments as chat channels as well. Again, you'll see this lightning bolt icon. So if something in a blog post is something that you should be following up, you can add this again to your personal to-do list and start working on it at a later time. If this is a really long post, by the way, and you want to read it somewhere on Friday, for example, when you have some time, you can also add the full blog post to your to-do list, and you can now see that the Mars Office blog post is there as a to-do item to work on, or at least to consult. I mentioned blog posts can be company-wide, such as this one. But they can also be targeted at just one single location. So if you look at all of the blog posts that are here, you'll see that there was a piece of cake blog post where someone on the team was saying that they were coming to that specific office and they would bring some cake to sample. Well, they sent this blog post to just the people in the Algol office. So not everyone in the company is bothered by this broadcast, but only the people where this post may be relevant to. Blog posts can have comments, they can have reactions, and they can have a description, but you will see that they can also have an event attached. So let me see, I cannot edit this particular one, so let's maybe create a new blog post. When you create a blog post, you can add an event to that blog post as well. So what you can do is say, for example, I want to focus this blog post to the administration team in just one office, and I want to add an event that is going on somewhere next week, Thursday at 8 a.m. till 9 a.m. I can save this blog post, and this is not a meeting now, but people can still add this blog post to their calendar. So what you can do with this approach is, if you have a company all hands meeting, or you want to do a yoga class or whatever and have people join at some point, you can announce this as a blog post, attach the event, and people can just click, yes, I'll be there, and it will be automatically again added into their calendars. Right, so that's this blog post, and I see that I have a couple of those blog posts there that I want to remove. I've been doing too many demos this week, so I'll quickly do some cleaning up there as well. One thing that you may notice is that blog posts can be something that I intentionally write as a blog post, but what you will also see is that documents from my projects are shown here in documents. And for example, this Kubernetes clusters documentation, while it is part of documentation in a project, maybe I want to broadcast this to the entire software development team as well. So what I can do is publish this to the blog, so it will be part of our knowledge base, but also announced to everyone in the team to know, look, we have a new Kubernetes cluster that you can start working with. So it's again integrating multiple components, having a knowledge base that people can look at all times, but also having an announcement to notify people that something that matters to them is going on. All right, what else is there? I mentioned the administration dashboard. So if you have a space organization, there's a number of things that you can do. So for example, configure the logo, configure member profiles, configure teams, locations, equipment that you may have in your meeting room. So all of that can be managed from here. You'll also be able, if you have a subscription, to see what plan you are on, what your current resource usage is, and so on. So to optimize your pricing and all of that. If you are in a regulated industry, so for example, if you are a bank and you need your users of your space organization to actually approve them using space, you can also write your own user agreement there and have your users accept using space in your organization. There's authentication modules that you can configure. So for example, by default, Space uses a built-in authentication module where you have users stored in Space. If you already have an Active Directory, for example, or an Azure Active Directory, or you're using an LDAP server to authenticate in your organization, you can also add such an authentication module into Space so that you have single sign-on for all of your users who want to start using Space, so they don't have to remember yet another password. You can also invite others. So if you don't use Active Directory, for example, but you still want to invite people in your company to join, you can simply publish an invitation to them via email, and they'll be able to manually join Space as well. One last thing that I want to talk about, actually two last things, is customization. So Space is there. Space has lots of built-in modules to integrate with software development, to have documents, to have chats, to have to-dos, all of that. But maybe that's not enough for everyone who is using Space. So what you can do is customize Space with, for example, custom fields. If for all of your users, you want to keep track on whether they have a laptop or not, what you can do is create a public field, that is a checkbox in this case, where every profile will have that information attached as a custom field that is only relevant to your organization. If you want to do the same thing with absences and you want to, for example, I don't know, maybe add a percentage if you have 20% time in your company, or you want to provide some options where people can select multiple options, you can customize that and make it part of booking a vacation, for example. Those are built in and easy to add custom fields really to all of the entities that are in Space. Now, this may not yet be enough if you really want to heavily start customizing Space. So some other things that you can do is build your own applications like chatbots, like status reporting to a chat, all of that. And you do that by, first of all, creating an application. Nothing special there. Each application will have privileges on what the application can do as well. But then an application can make use of the API that is available in Space. And I know this is very technical and very developer oriented, but just quickly want to highlight that all of the things that you can do in the user interface in Space are also available for programmers to work with. So if you have an existing system and you want from that existing system to be able to send a message into a chat channel, well, you can use the HTTP API playground in Space to figure out how you can start working with that and how you can develop your own custom integration with Space that is sending a chat message there. So with that, I think I've shown most of what is in Space in a very high-level overview. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to take them. And if not, dziękuję for having me here today.
Yes, hello. I have a question about integration. Can you tell about more? Of course, I mean about Office 365 or something more about tools or software to be integration. You talk about Teams, sorry. And can you maybe a few words about integration?
Yeah, absolutely. So I already showed you integration with identity providers. So if you have Office 365 or Google App Engine or Google Apps or something like that, you can use that as an authentication module. You can have those custom fields on issues, on member profiles, on whatever is there. You can build your own applications, work with the API to do your own integration. And there's also a couple of integrations that we are currently working on. So right now, it's not yet there, but we are working on an integration with Office 365 and with Google Apps calendars, so that if you already have an existing calendar system, that information can be synchronized with Space, so that if in Space you are going through whatever is there, this agenda widget, for example, will contain all of your appointments that you have in Office 365, for example. Same thing with meetings. So if you book a meeting in Space, the idea is that the synchronization is also going to be bidirectional. So if you book a meeting from within Space, it will also appear in your Google Apps or in Office 365. And it will also generate a link to a Teams meeting or something like that. Speaking about a Teams meeting, we're working on an integration with that, but we're also working on our own video call system in Space. Should come somewhere in this year, where directly in Space you can make a call to someone else as well. I also talked about being able to create your own applications, where you can essentially register a new application and start working on that. This is step one, where you can build an application. Step two is going to be where others can bring applications into Space. So we are currently working with partners to build a number of default integrations that you as a customer of Space can install into your Space organization. So for example, I know a couple of partners are working on a time tracking system that you can add as an application into Space. So all of those integrations with third-party tools that our partners are building will be made available in Space as well in a marketplace. Not there yet, but it's coming.
Okay, thank you very much. I have one more deeper question about API. Can you give, for example, API when the, for example, reseller wants to be added to CRM or something more?
Yes, absolutely. So the API is there. And if you have a CRM system, for example, where you want to keep track of issues or post something from your CRM into an issue, you can do that. So you can create an issue, for example, using the API. You will see that if you select a project and you add a title and a status, you can use the API directly or get a code sample of using our SDK to do this. So if you, from your CRM system, want to post something into Space, that is definitely possible. The other way around is also there. So that's not in the API playgrounds. But you'll see that, where can I best show this? I'll quickly go into a project, into the settings of a project, and then webhooks. So you'll see that in Space, for a lot of events that are happening, in this case, it's a project, but also for issues, for chats, for essentially every entity in Space, we're also doing the inverse, where we can have Space call into your API. So for example, if someone creates a new issue and adds a comment there with the customer name, you can link that issue to something in your CRM system, because Space at that point will be able to post something to that CRM system.
Okay, thank you very much.
Maybe I missed that, but I have a question. Can we make calls in the chat or not?
So currently in the chat, you cannot yet make calls. So if you need that, currently you still have to use an external system. We are working on that, where in a chat you will be able to just click this icon and say voice chat, and you'll be able to make a call.
Okay. One more question, because I understand that now all data is stored on your servers, yeah, or cloud or something else. Are there many options or plans for setting it up to our company environment or not?
Not right now. So what you will see is that right now we have a cloud version only. On-premises solution is coming. So the idea is that we will be shipping probably some container images that you can host on premises and really have Space, all data, all application logic hosted in your data center or your own cloud environments. Also, cloud right now is hosted in AWS in the Ireland data center. We are also working on making multiple locations available there. So if you have customers or you have a branch office that is in China, for example, the idea is that we will also have regional deployments of Space in multiple locations on AWS.
Okay, thanks.